It was a quiet Sunday morning when James sat on his porch, the early sunlight casting soft gold across the worn wood beneath his feet. At 74, he liked to think of himself as sharp and mostly strong, but lately something had shifted. He wasn't ill, at least not in any medical sense, but he felt heavier. Not in weight, but in effort. Standing up from a chair took longer. Concentrating on a book felt like a task. Even joy, once found easily in gardening or chatting with neighbors, seemed to come slower. "Maybe I'm just getting old," he told himself, echoing the same phrase he had heard his father say decades ago. But there was something about that thought that didn't sit right. He wasn't sick, he just wasn't thriving. What James didn't realize, and what so many others don't either, is that aging doesn't automatically mean losing vitality. Often, it's not time but tiny, repeated habits that chip away at one's independence. A skipped glass of water, a missed meal, days spent inside, conversations avoided, movements never made. At first, they seem harmless. Life gets quieter, slower, more inward, but over months and years, those little omissions become a pattern, and the body, once flexible and responsive, begins to echo that withdrawal. It's not about blame. These shifts happen subtly. You stop drinking water because you're not thirsty. You eat less because you don't feel hungry. You stay in because going out feels like a chore. You assume it's all natural, but it's not inevitable. These aren't the signs of aging. They're the signs of habits that no longer serve you. James's story is like many others. He didn't need a drastic intervention. He just needed awareness, and one small shift at a time. That's where it starts. Not with a revolution, but with a gentle re-evaluation. A recognition that the routines you carry into your 70s and beyond are not fixed. They are changeable. And sometimes the tiniest adjustment, like adding one new habit or letting go of one outdated belief, can open a door back to energy, clarity, and confidence. So before we talk about complicated plans or major changes, let's start where all real change begins. With attention, with kindness, with curiosity. Let's explore 6 quiet habits that, once understood, can either quietly weaken or powerfully renew your later years. James didn't need to get younger. He just needed to live smarter. Maybe you do too. Harold was never one to fuss over details. At 78, he had his routines. The same chair for breakfast, the same crossword every afternoon, the same quiet evenings with the news humming in the background. He considered himself fortunate. No major illnesses, still able to drive. And his mind, though not as quick as it once was, remained clear. But something had changed over the past year. He found himself pausing mid-sentence, forgetting why he entered a room, or feeling dizzy when he stood up too fast. His skin had become dry, his energy inconsistent. "It's age," he told himself. "This is just how it goes." But at his annual checkup, his doctor noticed something. "Harold, how much plain water do you drink?" The question caught him off guard. "I have coffee in the morning," he said. "Maybe some juice with lunch." The doctor nodded gently. "And water?" Harold shrugged. "I drink if I'm thirsty." That was the moment something clicked. As we age, the body's thirst signals become weaker. The internal alarm that once told us to drink simply quiets down. Not feeling thirsty doesn't mean you're hydrated. It often means the body has stopped asking. And for older adults, this quiet dehydration isn't just about dry mouths or fatigue. It can affect memory, cause constipation, lead to dizziness, and even increase the risk of infections. The body begins to slow not because it's old, but because it's parched. Harold took the advice seriously. He didn't overhaul his life. He didn't carry a giant water bottle or force himself to drink endlessly. He simply added a glass of water mid-morning and another mid-afternoon. He placed a small tumbler by his recliner and another by the bed. Within a few weeks, the difference was undeniable. His concentration returned. His energy in the evenings improved. Even his skin, once tight and papery, felt more comfortable. He hadn't realized how quietly dehydration had crept into his daily life. That's how it works. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It just gently dims the lights inside you. Water may seem too simple to matter, but after 70, it becomes one of the most essential and often overlooked allies. You don't need gallons, you just need rhythm. A glass with breakfast, a sip before lunch, a warm herbal tea after dinner. Not because you feel thirsty, but because your body still needs care, even if it's no longer asking. Harold learned this in time, and every quiet sip since has been a gentle way of saying, "I'm still here. I still care." Dorothy had always believed in the power of fresh air. Every morning, rain or shine, she'd lace up her sneakers and take a slow walk around the block. Sometimes she'd stop to wave to neighbors. Other times, she'd simply enjoy the stillness. At 76, she considered herself lucky. No major health issues, steady legs, and a daily rhythm that gave her purpose. Walking was her medicine, and she wore that badge with pride. But over the course of a year, something began to change. She noticed it first when she struggled to lift herself from her favorite armchair. Then came the occasional wobble while stepping off a curb. One morning, while reaching for the remote control, she lost her balance and fell to the floor. Thankfully, she wasn't seriously hurt, but the shock lingered. Not in her bones, but in her confidence. Her doctor was kind but firm. "Dorothy, walking is excellent for your heart and mind, but it's not enough for your muscles." She blinked, unsure. "Isn't walking exercise?" He smiled gently. "It is, but it's not strength training. And after 70, muscle loss happens faster than you'd expect." The term was unfamiliar. Sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass with age. Even daily walking couldn't stop it. Without strength, Dorothy's stability was fading. Her muscles weren't being challenged. The solution wasn't complex or exhausting. It began, quite simply, with a kitchen chair and a wall. A physical therapist showed her simple strength exercises, standing up and sitting down slowly from a chair without using her hands, pressing against the wall like a push-up, lifting soup, cans in each hand. She didn't need a gym. She needed gravity, time, and patience. Twice a week became 3. Repetitions grew with ease, and over time, so did her confidence. Within 2 months, she stood taller. Getting off the couch no longer felt like climbing a mountain. Her steps became surer. She felt stronger, not just in her legs, but in her spirit. Strength isn't about bulging muscles or heavy weights. It's about keeping the life you love within reach. Opening jars, standing from the toilet, carrying groceries. These are small, freedoms that rely on muscle. And when they're gone, independence follows. Dorothy learned that walking kept her moving, but strength kept her upright. That knowledge became her new rhythm. A walk for peace of mind, and strength work for peace of body. And each time she lifted those soup cans, she wasn't just exercising, she was reclaiming herself. Ed had always prided himself on being disciplined. He'd watched his weight for decades, maintained a lean frame, and avoided overindulgence. "Light and clean," he used to say with a wink, spooning his modest bowl of soup at dinner. At 81, he still prepared his own meals: toast with coffee in the morning, a small sandwich at noon, and something simple in the evening. He believed his restraint kept him sharp, but lately, something felt off. He noticed it in the mornings. His legs felt wobbly. He had to steady himself at the sink. His energy waned by midday, and simple errands became exhausting. One afternoon, while trying to open a jar of pickles, his hands trembled so much he gave up. It wasn't like him. He wondered if age was finally catching up. His daughter, a nurse, came to visit and noticed the difference right away. "Dad," she said gently, "you're not eating enough." He frowned. "I eat the same way I always have." She nodded. "But your body's not the same anymore." That night, she explained what he hadn't realized. As people age, their bodies require more, not less, nourishment to maintain strength, immunity, and healing. Appetite might fade, digestion might slow, but the need for protein, healthy fats, and essential nutrients doesn't diminish. In fact, it increases. Undereating can seem harmless, especially when it's done in the name of staying lean or avoiding bad foods. But when muscles aren't fed, the body starts consuming itself. It weakens from the inside out. That's what was happening to Ed. With the help of a nutritionist, Ed made a few gentle changes: a scrambled egg with his toast, a scoop of peanut butter with afternoon crackers, protein powder stirred into his evening oatmeal. Nothing radical, just more of what his body needed. Within weeks, he began to feel sturdier. His legs held him with more certainty. His hands steadied. He could carry a full grocery bag again without fear. And perhaps most importantly, his face looked brighter. He even joked more. Food, he realized, wasn't the enemy. It was the support beam. He hadn't been eating light. He'd been eating insufficiently. And that wasn't virtue. It was quiet depletion. Now, every meal became a quiet act of care. Not indulgence, but nourishment. Not fear, but respect for the life his body still carried. Ed hadn't lost strength. He just stopped giving it the fuel it needed. And now that he did, he got a little of himself back. Phyllis had always been diligent about her health. Ever since her mid-60s, she had taken her medications each morning with the same unwavering rhythm: a glass of water, a neat row of pills, and the quiet assurance that she was doing everything right. Now, at 79, she still followed that same ritual. Blood pressure tablets, something for cholesterol, a sleeping aid, a supplement for joints. It had become routine, like brushing her teeth or locking the front door. But in recent months, something began to feel strange. She was sleeping during the day more than she used to. Her conversations wandered off track. Her balance felt less secure, and twice she had nearly fallen while reaching for a light switch. "It's just age," she reasoned again and again. But her daughter, visiting from out of town, noticed the difference. "Mom," she said softly, "you're not yourself lately. When was the last time someone reviewed all the meds you're taking?" That night, they sat at the kitchen table, with every bottle Phyllis could find: prescriptions, over-the-counter tablets, herbal supplements. The list surprised even her. Over the years, one pill had been added here, another there. No one had ever looked at the whole picture. At her daughter's suggestion, they made an appointment with a pharmacist for a comprehensive medication review. The pharmacist took his time. He asked thoughtful questions and reviewed interactions. What he found wasn't alarming, but it was revealing. Two medications, fine on their own, were now interacting due to changes in her liver's processing speed. A sleeping pill she had relied on for years was now contributing to daytime fogginess. Her supplement for joint pain was amplifying the effects of her blood pressure medication. With the approval of her doctor, they adjusted her doses. One medication was stopped altogether. Another was replaced with something milder. Over the following weeks, Phyllis began to feel like herself again. The daytime naps grew shorter. Her speech became clearer. Her balance steadied. And with that, her confidence returned. She had never questioned her prescriptions. They were given by trusted doctors at different times, for different reasons. But she had changed, and so had her body. What had once helped her was now quietly working against her. Phyllis learned that medications are not set and forget. They are living tools that must evolve as we do. And reviewing them isn't defiance, it's wisdom. It's respect for how far you've come and care for where you're going. Now, each pill she takes is not a habit. It's a choice, an informed, supported choice. And that makes all the difference. Lester had always been a man of quiet habits. At 82, he still woke up before sunrise, made his tea exactly the way he liked it, and took his dog, Milo, for a short walk around the block. It wasn't far, but it was his ritual. Fresh air, a bit of movement, the occasional nod to neighbors. That morning stroll made him feel part of the world. But then, one winter day, Lester slipped on the icy front step. The fall wasn't serious, just a bruised hip and a shaken spirit. But it changed. Something. He started skipping his walks. At first, it was caution. Then came excuses. Too cold, too windy, too much trouble. Milo seemed confused, pacing by the door, but Lester stayed inside. Weeks passed. His legs felt stiffer. His sleep became restless. A dull heaviness settled over his afternoons. He didn't feel ill, but he didn't feel right either. And slowly, without noticing, the days began to blur together. His daughter, Emily, noticed it when she came by. "Dad, when's the last time you got outside?" He hesitated. "I don't really go out much now. I just don't see the point." Emily didn't push. The next morning, she brought him a chair and a warm blanket and placed them on the front porch. "10 minutes," she said. "Tea's ready. I'll sit with you." That small shift marked the beginning of something important. At first, it was just sitting. Then a wave from a neighbor, the sound of birds, a breeze. Within days, Lester began to look forward to those moments. He didn't walk far, just to the mailbox and back. But it was enough. What he hadn't realized was how much his body and mind needed nature. The sunlight on his skin triggered the production of vitamin D, which helped his bones and mood. The P, rhythm of the outside world, the flutter of leaves, distant laughter, the feeling of open air, brought him back into connection with life beyond his living room. Staying indoors had dulled his senses. Re-engaging, even gently, brought color back into his days. He started sleeping better. His legs felt less stiff. The world, once distant, felt close again. Lester learned that isolation doesn't start with people. It starts with stillness, with closed doors and drawn curtains. But it can be reversed just as gently. A cup of tea outside, a few steps toward the sun, a moment of breath beneath the sky. Being outside reminded him that he was still part of something larger. And that, life, in its quietest forms, was still waiting. Marie had always found comfort in paper. She wrote letters by hand, kept photo albums with neat captions, and still used a wall calendar where each family birthday was carefully circled in blue ink. At 74, she felt no urge to go digital. Smartphones seemed noisy, confusing, and impersonal. Her flip phone was enough, until it wasn't. When her eldest granddaughter moved out of state, Marie felt the shift immediately. The phone calls grew shorter, less frequent. Birthdays came and went without the usual cards or visits. Her children began sending updates through group texts and photos over apps she didn't understand. She missed seeing the baby's first steps, missed knowing what everyone was doing. Slowly, and not by anyone's intention, she began to feel left out. It's just how things are now, she told herself. That's their world, not mine. One afternoon, her neighbor Helen stopped by with a plate of cookies and a gentle suggestion. "Marie, would you let me show you just one thing? Just how to read messages. You don't have to reply, just see them." Marie hesitated, then nodded. They sat at the kitchen table. Helen handed her an old smartphone with a simple screen. "Tap. Here," she said. A photo of her granddaughter laughing in the park filled the screen. Then a video, her grandson singing at school. Marie's eyes welled up. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed. Over the next week, Helen returned. A few more times. Marie learned how to join a video call. Her family was delighted. "Grandma!" her granddaughter shouted through the screen, waving wildly. Marie smiled so wide it hurt her cheeks. It wasn't about mastering technology. It was about not being shut out from life's small joys. She didn't need to scroll endlessly or install a dozen apps. She just needed a window, one that allowed her to stay close to the people she loved. Now, every Tuesday evening, Marie joins a virtual book club for seniors. She receives reminders from her doctor's office via text. She even sends the occasional emoji, much to her grandson's amusement. What once felt foreign now felt like connection. Marie learned that saying, "I'm too old for this," doesn't protect you. It limits you. Growth doesn't stop with age. And staying connected isn't about mastering every gadget. It's about allowing yourself to be reached. And in doing so, she found not just her family again, but a part of herself she thought had quietly faded.